We read because we seek something new. An experience. We want to feel and taste someone else's life, see through another one's eyes, and get carried away. We love to throw ourselves into a story and get so deeply immersed that on some occasions we might even forget where we are. I've personally been there, missing my stop on a train or sitting at a doctor's office and suddenly being pulled back into reality without even knowing where I was. Or just simply reading until 3 a.m. while still knowing I have to get out at 6. The question for those of us who write stories and who want to become authors, of course, is how can we achieve this? What have other authors done in the past to write stories that are so compelling that their audience is pulled into those universes, pulled into those stories so deeply that they might even question reality? The short answer here is that, unfortunately, there is no single technique that can achieve this. There is no spell you can weave into your writing, or there is no wand you can wave to make your stories an automatic success. But there's advice, and there's guidance from people who have written such compelling stories. When someone starts writing stories and starts taking it seriously, they'll find tons of advice on how to write a good story. There's advice on what to avoid and to look out for, advice on world building, advice on how to structure stories, on what to do when you get stuck. I mean, look at all those books here. All those wonderful books helping you to find out how to actually write a good story. And even if you read all of those, what doesn't change is that writing is still art. Some of it can be taught, not wanting to say it cannot. But nobody can teach you how to create your very own style, your very own art. And art is always subjective. And it's up to you to get a feeling what you want your art to be. Writing is a craft that not only demands courage, but also a great amount of discipline. What stands is that we as artists are oftentimes not able to truly judge our own work. We might think it's great, or we might think it's awful, but most of the time we'll be better off to let others judge it. And even then, all judgment of art is subjective. You'll find people liking what you write, and you'll find people not being able to read past even 3 sentences of what you've written. I've had those occasions where I wrote like 50 pages and I thought, wow, this is so great, it's amazing. And then I gave it out to some alpha readers, and some of them just gave it back and told me, hey, I'm sorry, I couldn't read past the first page. And that hurts, and oftentimes is really hard to cope with. If we're not able to judge ourselves if our stories are good or bad, and we can only rely on, let's say, the median of what all people who have read what we've written think, how can we even ever know what good writing is? One topic you will stumble upon repeatedly is showing versus telling. Show, don't tell. A phrase so often used to describe when a story or a scene doesn't really transport enough towards the reader. And unfortunately, especially newer writers seem to think that showing is good and telling is bad. It's a catchy phrase regurgitated over and over on Reddit and Discord and other writing forums by people who sometimes don't even know what they are actually talking about. It's the just be yourself advice for writers. Meaning, it's a quote that is used so often and without further clarification that most people using it can't even explain what it means. Similar to saying, just be yourself, everything is going to be fine when you're going on an interview for a job or when you're going on a date. But those people giving that advice, they often seem to fail to specify what being yourself actually means. And I think show, don't tell is similar to that. It's advice that is brought into a discussion so fast and so often, but people fail to just tell those who they criticize what they specifically mean by that. And I think that's troubling. Giving feedback and advice on a story is something I struggle with myself. As much as I'm trying to give insight towards you right now, my research on this video has been a tremendous benefit and helped me understand more deeply what showing versus telling actually means. So why don't we take a look at the actual definition of show don't tell? Wikipedia states, show don't tell is a narrative technique used in various kinds of texts to allow the reader to experience the story through actions, words, subtext, thoughts, senses, and feelings, rather than through the author's exposition, summarization, and description. It avoids adjectives describing the author's analysis and instead describes the scene in such a way that readers can draw their own conclusions. The concept is often attributed to Russian playwright Anton Chekhov, reputed to have said, "Don't tell me the moon is shining, show me the glint of light on broken glass." Chekhov said, "In descriptions of nature, one must seize on small details, grouping them so that when the reader closes his eyes, he gets a picture." So show don't tell is a writing technique that is meant to pull the reader closer into the story and experience what is happening almost as if they were there. It's the difference between saying the room was moderately lit by a small orange light bulb, which would be solely describing the scene, and saying light flowed from the lone bulb dangling from the ceiling, throwing shadows at the walls and bathing the space in an orange gloom, which would paint a much more clearer picture. Showing transports feelings and can set the mood or tone for a scene. It actually has nothing to do with the story itself. It's a technique that helps readers immerse themselves and feel what they are reading, rather than the story just being described. We want to see, feel, and smell a painting, not being described how it looks like. Ernest Hemingway was a known proposer of showing, not telling, stating, in regards to his iceberg theory of writing, that if a writer of prose knows enough of what he is writing about, he may omit things that he knows, and the reader, if the writer is writing truly enough, will have a feeling of those things as strongly as though the writer had stated them. The dignity of movement of an iceberg is due to only 1/8 of it being above water. What Hemingway basically means is to give the reader a glance of what lies behind his words, without straight out telling everything. He wants the reader to see the cap of the iceberg and through his narration make them realize the immensity that lies below. The goal is that the reader finds himself wondering and his mind paints a picture that is immensely richer than what any written word would be able to achieve. The effect of good showing can be seen when readers of the same story get in an exchange about that story. I mean, have you ever talked to your significant other or to friends about a story and realized that you have pictured a main character completely different than they have? That what your friends have seen or imagined was vastly different? I think this is an effect of good showing while still retaining Hemingway's iceberg theory. A great example on how to show and not tell is Stephen Erickson's Malazan series. The books are controversial to many in the fantasy genre, having two extreme bases. One loving them inherently for their rich world, beautiful prose, and vast array of characters, and the other base feeling left alone, frustrated, and without explanation. And despite being rather from the first base, I do really understand people not enjoying the series because you truly are left alone. There are almost no explanations about anything. Characters and viewpoints are changing at least every book. The basis of the magic system is explained only in book 5 or book 6. There's almost no description of how characters visually look like. And for some people that is great, because their imagination will fill in the blanks. The creative side of their brain will enhance what they read. And by that I don't mean that those people are somewhat smarter or more intelligent than others. They just enjoy the work they themselves have to do while reading. And not everybody enjoys that work. I occasionally do not like it at all. And despite being hooked by this series, there are many occasions in which I would simply wish for more straightforward descriptions, for more telling. This form of intensely showing and not telling can be very frustrating, because Erikson does not describe or tell us how characters look like or how different races are portrayed. The reader's brain has to do some work, and this is not only something many people aren't used to anymore, it's also something that is exhausting. There's an amount of blanks to fill for us that can also lead to not having the clearest picture, because we simply, as readers, are encouraged to do our own thinking work. Until now, and I won't be Googling that, because I don't want to change the picture that I have in my mind. One of the races of the Malazan series resembles a Tauren from World of Warcraft. This might not be accurate at all, it probably isn't. But it's what my mind has come up with because of the lack of description. And I actually never have played a Tauren. I've played lots of World of Warcraft, I'll state that. But it's not like a race I actually love or have played. But still, I do love the picture I have in my mind when reading of that character. It's an instant filling in of those blanks. And that's lots of fun. So the question stands, is a lot of showing and less telling good for your work? Is it something you have to do as intensely as Erikson does it? Do you need to show more and tell less? The writer is of course much more knowledgeable than the reader, and showing transports meaning without spoon feeding. But is it always the better choice? It depends. Those are questions only you and your audience can answer. Because the downsides of so much showing is not only that some people might feel left alone, lost, or straight out be confused because there isn't enough information for them to paint a clear picture, your story will also increase immensely in length. And for some genres this is good, especially epic fantasy, which is written for readers who love novels that are 200,000 words long. But not every reader needs a one-stat, and might even be reluctant to pick up a book with so many pages. If you're writing romance, crime, YA, or any other genre, you might want to be much more precise on when to show and when to tell. Because there are certain passages in stories that might be better just told instead of shown. This also dips into the pacing of your story. Alternating between show and tell speeds up and slows down your story when it's necessary and serves your narration. In the end, good writing, for me personally, is reader-oriented writing. There is no general answer to what is good or bad writing, because every author has their own style. Every genre has its preferences, and every reader likes or dislikes certain techniques. It is for you as an author to find out who your audience is and what they like to read. That doesn't mean you have to change your writing to exactly match your audience preferences. Please don't get me wrong here. It's about finding a sweet spot how you enjoy writing while still appeasing to your audience. Just because some of your readers do enjoy more cozy or casual written stories that do not expect them to put in too much brain work, that doesn't mean you have to follow that path. Seek what you enjoy as a writer first, then seek your audience, then adapt. I'm all for making readers work more. We are writers. We write stories, books, novels. For spoon feeding, there's TikTok and YouTube Shorts. I guess this is it. Thank you for being here, for joining me on my journey. And as I've said before, if you want to make this a conversation, come join me live. I will be streaming on Twitch, and I'll probably also convert to streaming on YouTube. I'll see. If you want to support me in any way, and if you liked what I've been talking about, leave a like, subscribe to my channel. This always helps for any new YouTuber. Also, leave a comment on what topics you want to talk about. And if you're really into it, come and make this an exchange. Keep reading and keep writing.